My partner asked me what day payroll hits, then corrected me when I answered. He doesn't work with payroll. He doesn't even work at my company. At first it was almost flattering, like he cared about my job beyond the usual, "How was your day?" My life is pretty normal. I'm a project manager at a mid-sized manufacturing company, and I'm the type who color codes my calendar and packs lunch on Sundays. My partner, Nate, is in sales for a logistics firm. We live together, split rent, binge the same shows, fight about whose turn it is to clean the shower like every other couple. So when he started asking about cash flow and accounts payable cycles, I assumed he was bored and trying to sound impressive. It started small. Over dinner he'd say, "Do they pay vendors net 30 or net 60? Or, is your CFO the kind of guy who'd approve an early pay discount?" I'd blink, laugh a little, and say, "Why are you asking me this?" He always had an answer ready. "I'm just trying to understand your world. I read an article about businesses tightening credit. My buddy's company is struggling and it got me thinking." The questions got more specific. One night we were folding laundry and he asked, casually, "How many people are on your payroll, like total headcount?" I gave him a ballpark. He nodded like he was doing math in his head and then asked, "And what do you think monthly payroll is?" "Roughly?" I stopped pairing socks. "Why would you need to know that?" He shrugged. "It's just interesting. You always talk about being slammed." I'm trying to picture the scale. In hindsight, that was my first warning sign. He didn't ask about my day anymore. He asked about my company like it was a puzzle. A week later, he asked for a tour. Not, "I'd love to see where you work." It was, "Could you show me the warehouse sometime? I've never been in a manufacturing setup." He said it like it was a cute date idea. I told him visitors were a pain because you need PPE and a badge and it's an active floor. He didn't drop it, "Just the front office then. I want to put faces to the names you complain about." That made me laugh, but it also made me picture him walking around, scanning nameplates and copying down titles. I said no, more firmly. His smile stayed on, but his eyes went flat for half a second. Then he started asking about the people. Not gossip, not personalities, roles. Who signs off on wire transfers? Does AP have dual approval? Do you guys use a bank portal with tokens or just passwords? I told myself he was being an anxious nerd. Nate can get fixated on stuff. He once spent 3 days researching the best carbon monoxide detector and then gave a 20-minute presentation like he was pitching a product. But something about these questions felt directional, like he was walking toward an answer he wasn't saying out loud. The first real fight happened over something stupid, our shared laptop. He asked to borrow it because his work computer was updating. I opened it later to order groceries and noticed my browser had a bunch of tabs open, articles about business banking portals, invoice fraud, and one titled, "How to Detect an Embezzling Employee." My stomach did that slow, hot twist of embarrassment mixed with alarm. When I confronted him, he laughed too loud. "You think I'm plotting a heist? Babe, I fell down a rabbit hole. It's like true crime, but for money." He closed the laptop like that should end it. I didn't push, because I didn't have anything concrete. But I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. And once you start paying attention, you notice everything. He'd glance at my work badge when it was on the counter, like he was reading the little serial number. He asked what our bank was out of curiosity. He asked if our CFO traveled a lot. He asked if I ever worked late alone. It's hard to explain how humiliating it is to feel suspicious of someone you share a bed with. I kept rewriting his behavior into something harmless because the alternative was admitting I might be living with a problem I helped invite in. The incident that snapped me out of denial was an email. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed with a notification from our company's generic inbox, an address I'm on for project updates. The subject line was something like, "Updated vendor banking details, urgent." That's normal in our world. We switch suppliers, change ACH info, that kind of thing. What wasn't normal was the sender name. It looked like our controller's name, but the email address was one character off. Like swapping an L for an I. The message was polished, impatient, and included a PDF form to update wire details. If you've never seen one of these, they're designed to land on a busy person and get processed without thinking. The PDF even had our logo on it. I stared at it, then at my meeting notes, then back at the email. I'd taken a phishing training last quarter and felt weirdly proud of myself for spotting it. Then a thought arrived, fully formed and ugly. Nate. Not because I wanted to blame him, but because it fit too neatly with his, just curious, questions. Approval workflows. Bank portal access. Who signs wires? I forwarded the email to IT security. 10 minutes later, my supervisor pinged me. Good catch. Do not open attachments. We're investigating. I drove home that night with my hands clenched on the steering wheel like I was bracing for impact. Nate was on the couch, scrolling his phone, relaxed. I watched him for a second, looking for something obvious, guilt, nerves, anything. He looked up and smiled like nothing existed beyond whatever show we'd been watching. I didn't accuse him. I asked a question. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual, did you get any weird emails lately? Like someone pretending to be your boss? He barely looked up. No. Why? I sat on the other end of the couch. We got one at work today. Fake vendor update. It's freaking out. That got his attention. He paused his scrolling. Did anyone fall for it? The speed of that question made my skin prickle. I don't think so, I said. It was pretty convincing though. He nodded slowly, like he was disappointed in a movie plot. Yeah, those scams are getting crazy. I waited. Crazy how? He started talking, too easily, about how the best ones target accounts payable, how they time it around month-end close, how they spoof domains. He wasn't bragging exactly, but he was comfortable in the details in a way that didn't match true crime for money. Then he said something that was either a slip or a test. If your AP person has a checklist, they'd call the vendor to confirm, he said. But if they're slammed, they might just update it. They, not you. Like he was outside watching the process. I excused myself to shower and sat on the bathroom floor with my phone in my hand, shaking. I did the most unromantic thing possible. I opened our shared Wi-Fi app and looked at connected devices. There was a laptop I didn't recognize, labeled something generic like DESKTOP4F2. When I checked the network history, it had been active late at night, on nights Nate told me he couldn't sleep. I didn't know what to do with that. I'm not a detective. I'm a person with a normal job who suddenly felt like the walls of my home were made of paper. The next day at work, IT pulled a few of us into a quick call. The phishing email wasn't random. It had referenced a real vendor we used and used internal language pulled from somewhere. That meant someone had access to more than a company directory. I reported, quietly, that I might have a personal connection worth looking into. My voice sounded like someone else's. To their credit, they didn't roll their eyes or treat me like a drama bomb. They asked for specifics, and I gave them the timeline. Nate's questions, the browser tabs, his interest in our bank portal, the who signs wires stuff. They asked if he'd ever used my work laptop. He hadn't, but he'd been near it enough. They asked if I ever talked about vendors at home. I had, in that mindless way you vent after a long day. By the end of the day, HR and security told me to take my work devices home in a locked bag and not leave them unattended. They also suggested, gently, that I think about my personal safety. That night I didn't play games. I waited until Nate came home, and I told him we needed to talk. I said, "You've been asking me questions about my company's finances that don't feel normal. And today we got a targeted scam email. I need you to tell me the truth about why you're so interested." He laughed once, like it was absurd. Then he saw my face and the laugh died. For a moment he tried the same script: curiosity, stress, rabbit holes. I didn't move. I didn't argue. I just kept looking at him. Finally he exhaled and said, "Okay, I messed up." His version of messed up was that he'd been talking online with a guy who claimed he did security consulting. Nate framed it like networking, like he was learning about fraud detection and compliance to pivot his career. Then it slid into him feeding that guy details about my company, at first vague, then more specific. He said he didn't think anything would happen. He said he never sent documents. He said he was just trying to sound smart. He said he didn't realize the guy was building a playbook. I listened, and I realized something worse than a villainous mastermind was sitting in front of me. It was a grown man who wanted to feel important so badly he treated my job like a trivia game, and my employer like a faceless training dummy. I asked to see his messages. He hesitated, just long enough to confirm that there was more than he was telling me. When he finally handed me his phone, a bunch of chats were deleted. The remaining ones were enough. There were my company's vendor names. There were questions about our accounting software. There were hypothetical scenarios that looked a lot like the email we got. I told him to pack a bag. He tried to negotiate like it was a misunderstanding. He said he'd cut contact. He said I was overreacting. He said he'd never, actually, stolen anything. But the thing about financial fraud is that it doesn't need a ski mask to ruin you. Sometimes it just needs one person who can't keep their mouth shut. He left that night. I changed the locks the next day and froze our shared credit for good measure. I gave my company everything I had, screenshots, dates, the name he'd been chatting with, even the Wi-Fi device history. A month later, security told me they'd traced the phishing campaign to a cluster of attempts hitting similar companies. They couldn't tell me all the details, but they thanked me for speaking up when I did. The email never got processed. No money was sent. Nate tried to come back twice. Once with flowers, once with anger. By then, the confusion had worn off and all I had left was clarity. I used to think trust was about believing someone wouldn't hurt you on purpose. Now I think it's also about believing they won't gamble with your life for the thrill of feeling clever. And once you learn that, you don't unlearn it.